Hey, this is man Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars on a Tuesday. We need to claim some baggage. Who? Shad Khan needs to claim some, and so do some of the local media and the fans. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what is happening, good people, on a Tuesday here on Locked On Jaguars, where you make us your first listen every single day, and we are glad that you do that. I am Tony Wiggins. If you hear something going on with my voice or I'm a little bit more melancholy than normal, it is because I'm a little bit under the weather. However, we're going to get through it. We're going to pull through and talk a little bit about this coaching search and what's going on with all of the different candidates. I got to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by onlinegaming.com, the place to be for all the latest gambling news and tips throughout the NFL playoffs. Visit onlinegambling.com/NFL to get the edge over the competition throughout this year's playoffs. I'm going to run you through a little bit about baggage today. What do I mean about baggage? What is so important about making sure that we move on and properly address some of the things in the past that have created baggage. So much has been made of Shad Khan wiping the slate clean and not bringing in people from the past. As news circulates out that it's likely that Shad may keep Trent Baalke on as the GM, and news also circulating out that Darrell Bevell will be interviewed for the job. And I just wonder why fans or media types, since everyone is saying that Joe Cullen needs to be retained, why no one has said that Joe Cullen should get an interview for the head coaching job, since all of these players have come out and say how much they love Joe Cullen. Why nobody's calling for that? And then if the answer is because, Tony, he is not a he's not an offensive coach, my next question would be, then how come the second Brian Flores, who's also not an offensive coach, was released? All those people, most of those people that I'm talking about, are saying the Jags need to call Brian Flores immediately. I mean, I get lost. I mean, there's some valid points that people make about not wanting Baalke to be around, or not wanting Bill O'Brien. By the way, let me tell you something. If y'all one game in Bill O'Brien, don't do that. Yeah, if y'all don't want him, just say you don't want Bill O'Brien. Just say you don't want nobody in here that's going to be arguing with people all the time, which it appears in his past that's what he's done. Or say that you don't want anybody who doesn't claim baggage, because Bill O'Brien's name has been associated with a lot of stuff that no one knows if he was really, really responsible for it or not. The Osweiler situation, there are different reports. Let's just say you don't want that kind of stuff, but don't one game this dude. Not when you saw those kids dropping balls last night when he was playing with freshman wide receivers. Not when he just put a 40 burger on that same vaunted defense. Not when he actually did develop Deshaun Watson and took those teams to the playoffs, and they've never been to the playoffs before. Not when he took over Penn State under Joe Pa and Sandusky and actually stabilized that situation. That's not one game to do it. If you don't want him, you don't want him, and that's cool. But y'all gonna one game Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy because they scored 9 points in the Super Bowl against the Bucks, right? Y'all gonna one game Josh McDaniels because he scored 10 points in the Super Bowl before? No. Mike Mars had the greatest show on turf, and he scored 20 points in one playoff Super Bowl and 17 in another, or 23 and 1 and 17. That's an average of 20 points. No, stop one game here. Y'all bigger than that, man. Just say you don't want him because it's too much baggage that hasn't been claimed, and it's the finger pointing, and that's the stuff we're trying to get away from here in Jacksonville. We're trying to get away from people. Nobody wants to take the blame or responsibility for anything. And it's just funny to me that when a guy like O'Brien gets into it with players, it's automatically his fault. But right here in Jacksonville, when players got into it with coaches, it was always the players' fault. It's hilarious. Man, we don't know these people. All you know is what people tell you. And three or four runs in the playoffs, winning 11, 12 games with backup quarterbacks, and that ain't good enough for you now. But just 2 weeks ago, I heard people saying that, hey, I just want somebody to go 8-8, because that's probably what you're going to get with Brian Flores. He's going to win 9 games. But everybody wants to now call Brian Flores to come be the coach, and he ain't an offensive coach either. We have to claim this baggage. What do I mean by baggage? You have to do things the right way. You can't let things from the past affect what you're doing now. And I'll give you a perfect example. Many fans and many people who are in the know that are very, very credible, they're like, hey, man, if you don't give the job to Jim Caldwell, who personally right now is my favorite for the position, and I'll tell you why in just a second. If you don't give it to him, make him the executive vice president of operations, a job that he's never, ever had before. He's a career football coach, man. This dude ain't ever done that. How do you know? There are people out here who do that for a living, who have been career tracking to that for 20 years. But the thing that we want to do is just grab a person and stick them in a job they've never had before because of what I call poison. And that poison is a word called familiarity. Just because you know them in one vernacular does not mean they're good in another. Tom Coughlin was a bad executive. Great football coach, terrible executive. Right? So, we need to cut that out. That just because in the past, Shad has tried with the scouts, and he tried with Caldwell, and he tried to get a guy who had Super Bowl success in Gus, and it didn't work, that all of a sudden now we need to figure out a new way to do things. No, that's baggage. Just because your ex lied to you all the time, when you get married, don't be not trusting that person because you got lied to before, because now you're blaming that person for something that they didn't do. That's baggage. That's what we got to stop. It's because you got it wrong the first time trying to do it right. You know what you do? You do it right again. You do the right thing. And when you don't do the right thing, you get yourself in trouble. You absolutely get yourself in trouble if you don't do things the right way just because you failed the first time. And I know everybody's going to say, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. No, the definition of insanity is doing exactly the same thing that you did before and expecting a different result. You don't have to do the exact same thing. You probably made some good choices, but you probably chose to do too many things outside of the box. New general manager, new coach, new this, new that, new owner, as opposed to getting some experience. You still have to have guys that have had experience doing things. So I'm going to tell y'all why Jim Caldwell over everybody else is my personal favorite choice of all the candidates that I've seen or heard about that were being interviewed for these jobs. So I'm going to give it to you and tell you why I think, like I said, Jim Caldwell is my favorite guy of all of the guys that have been interviewed or that will be interviewed. And I'm going to tell you why I favor him over Byron, and I'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. People think unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, but for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. Life changes are exciting, and they usually have tax implications. Maybe you were a full-time employee who decided to freelance, and now you need some advice on how to file as a contractor. Maybe you started driving rideshare after your 9-to-5 job, or maybe you work in one state but live in another, and you need help reporting your income. Luckily, TurboTax Live has experienced experts dedicated to answering all of your tax questions and finding every deduction for you. And you can talk to them from your phone without ever having to leave your house. Whether you got married, had kids, or changed careers, TurboTax Live experts are ready to help you with your unique tax situation and get you the best tax outcome. To TurboTax Live experts, an interesting life can mean an even greater refund. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. You do your thing. They've got your taxes. Intuit TurboTax Live. Jim Caldwell is my favorite candidate, and I'll tell you why. Because Not only is there seemingly no baggage, the only blip that Jim Caldwell had, in my opinion, is the year that the Colts were 14-0 and he rested his starters. They lost rhythm and then they got beat by the Jets, I believe, in the first round of the playoffs. Outside of that, everybody at every stop raves about Jim Caldwell. As a two-time Super Bowl winner, as a coordinator, and as an assistant head coach, one time with the Indianapolis Colts, is a good quarterback guy. Good quarterback guy, and understands, and this is very, very important, understands how to cultivate a culture around the quarterback for success. And I think he's a guy that a lot of assistant coaches would actually want to work for. So why is it important that I say he understands how to cultivate a situation around a quarterback? I've always talked about the dynamic between the coach and the quarterback and how important it is for that tandem to be in sync and to have a lot of success. But usually I'm talking about veteran quarterback when I talk about that. Um, it's important for me. I don't necessarily think they need to go out and get an offensive minded coach, like I just criticized some people for saying that earlier. I don't think they have to do that. But in this situation, I do think, because of Jim Caldwell being who he is, and because I know coaches would want to play for him, and I know he will instill a culture that even if you are having some success and there's a revolving door with the coordinator position, that he can find another guy, and that he's been around long enough, unlike the last coach the Jaguars had, that he understands how to go out and gravitate towards guys that have that certain continuity. That's the one thing with that Shanahan tree, man. There's plenty of dudes out there that know how to run that offense and navigate that offense. You're seeing them now popping up all over the place for job interviews. And I think Jim Caldwell's been around long enough in this league that he's probably the same way. He knows guys, and they know guys that they sort of do some of the same things, and they sort of have some of the same principles, and they look at offense and view the things that they install the same way. So the thing is with him is everybody raves about him, and everywhere he's gone, he's left an imprint on that franchise. So he is my favorite of all of the candidates. I like Doug Peterson too, but Doug has a little bit of that we're a little too familiar with whose fault was it. And see, we don't have that problem. We have that problem a little bit with O'Brien, well, a lot with O'Brien. We have that problem a little bit with Doug Peterson. We don't have that problem with Jim Caldwell. And I think Jaguars need to understand that they need to be fresh, drama-free, but not emphasizing that so much that you sacrifice a guy who has the ability to win for you. Caldwell does that. He checks every single box. I think the biggest thing is Trent Baalke. I don't want Trent Baalke around, but if there's somebody that has the demeanor to get along with Trent Baalke, it's probably Jim Caldwell. But make no mistake about it, don't sit here and think that a guy like him, and I asked somebody about him, and they told me, yeah, he's nice, but he's tough. And I think I used this example before. He's like your uncle, that's the deacon in the church. He don't play the radio now. I mean, he's a nice guy and he's approachable, but guys like that mean business. Like Tony Dungy didn't curse, but Tony Dungy was strict. Joe Gibbs didn't curse, but Joe Gibbs was strict, and he demanded and commanded a lot of his people. So sometimes I think we get to the point where we have a guy who doesn't curse, who's not very Doug Marone-ish or very Rex Ryan, and that seems like he's soft. That's not the case at all. These older cats, they carry themselves a certain way, and they don't like BS. But Jim Caldwell is the type of guy who would tell Trent Baalke exactly what he wants and exactly what he needs and exactly what's on his mind. I wish they were to get somebody else, but I don't know if they're going to do that at this point. I'll tell you a couple of these myths that are going on about the coaching search, and I want to tap on that real quick. There are some actual myths about that just really don't exist. Like, when you don't know about someone, like Brian Flores. There's rumors out now that he wasn't fired because of coaching. He was fired because he couldn't get along with people, right? And that he probably wasn't a big fan of Tua, and he probably alienated Tua because he was trying to go out and get Deshaun Watson so much. And it didn't. It didn't. What the word I keep using is cultivate. It didn't cultivate a culture that was conducive to everyone being successful. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? You're gonna trade that out. You got so much baggage that you're so used to losing that you want to win 9 games so bad that you'll trade it out for that. Now when you get Brian Flores, that also changes your personnel a little bit. It does. And we hear other myths. We want him to keep Joe Cullen. I like Joe Cullen too. He's running the Baltimore defense. No, he's running the Baltimore fronts. Joe Cullen is not a back-end coach. And I suspect that a lot of these guys that came in with Urban, they're going to leave. So if you keep Joe Cullen, what if Jim Caldwell has his own guy, or the idea of understanding the workflow of working with somebody else, and that guy's free? And this thing about listening to players, I feel you. When players are successful, I listen to them. But when you won 4 games in 2 years, I really don't care who you want to be the coach. It ain't like no better. There ain't one person on the Jaguars team that's ever won anything. Myths about coaches. You need a coach that's coached the quarterback before, and that's what you just had in Darrell Bevell. In Urban Meyer's own words, Darrell Bevell was hired because of the work that he did when Russell Wilson came out of college and they went and won a Super Bowl, right? Or they went to a Super Bowl. I don't know if he was there or not when they won it, but there you go. You just had that with Darrell Bevell. That is that. I'm trying to keep people from pigeonholing themselves and eliminating this broad spectrum of prospects just because you're specifically looking for one thing, because that changes every single minute. 1 minute you want an offensive coach, the next minute, not really, because you'll take a guy in Flores who's not an offensive coach, right? How much prosperity has all of these McVay guys had, really? You don't talk about the dude up in Cincinnati, Taylor. Well, you got a pretty damn good quarterback and a whole bunch of weapons. You want to talk about LaFleur up, and I'm not saying that they weren't good, but when LaFleur was in Tennessee, he wasn't thriving. He's thriving because he's probably with one of the 2 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game in Green Bay. I'm impressed with Shanahan. I'm extremely impressed with Kyle Shanahan. And I used to think that Kyle Shanahan didn't run the ball enough, but now he's running the ball all over the place, scheming people up. And how come nobody's mentioning D'Amico Ryans, the defense coordinator? Oh, I know why. See, here we go again with this poison, the familiarity. Because he coached under Robert Saleh, so he must run that defense we don't want to run. Let me explain something to y'all. All 4-3 defenses ain't the same. They're just not. No more than all 3-4 defenses being the same. New England does not run their defense the same way Baltimore does. Folks are real smart, but sometimes I wouldn't say lose, because the coaching, Shad Khan didn't pay no attention to us about who he's going to hire as coach. But I'm rooting for people to make valid points, and then all of a sudden they don't make a valid point anymore because they say something that really, really doesn't exist. I'm going to tell you who I hope the GM is, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I want this person to be the GM. And I'll be honest and transparent. Someone told me about it. Someone told me about this person, and I took a really good look, and I really, really liked what I saw. I'll tell you who it is in just a second here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Jaguars. Jaguar fans, this is Tony Wiggins, of course, your host of Locked On Jaguars, with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's the Get Upside app. My listeners are making up to 25 cents every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for NFL. That's touchdown is the promo code for our NFL customers, and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code touchdown. That's right, all of my NFL people and my Locked On Jaguars people. To get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 or $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account, and you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, an e-gift card, or Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code touchdown when you do it. Once again, the promo code is touchdown, and the Get Upside app can be found in Google Play or in your app store. All right, we're looking for an edge these days, and I'd like to thank onlinegambling.com for sponsoring today's podcast. If you don't know already, onlinegambling.com is a website dedicated to giving gamblers the edge throughout the playoffs. They're providing you with the best NFL tips, news, and more to help you make your bets as informed as ever. OnlineGambling.com gives gamblers the edge by providing the best and most trusted experience online all day, every day, inspiring every gambler in the world to beat the odds. Don't make emotional decisions with your hard-earned dollars. Make informed decisions with information sourced by experts. Be sure to consult OnlineGambling.com before placing your bets. Make sure you visit onlinegambling.com/NFL for all the latest gambling news and tips to give you the edge throughout the playoffs. Remember, it's onlinegambling.com to make the most of this year's playoff. Please go to www.onlinegambling.com and check out the latest NFL playoff news and tips on how to get the edge. All right, I'm going to tell you who I want them to pick as GM, even though I know it ain't going to happen because I'm getting more and more of a feeling that they're going to keep Trent Baalke, but I would like them to go out to San Francisco and grab Rand Carthon, who's the assistant GM for the 49ers. I think he has done a really, really good job assisting John Lynch with the way that they've constantly built and turned over that roster. I do believe that he's a good football man. He's a good guy. And someone put me on him, and I had to do a little bit of research. And in the research that I found out is that he's well respected around the league. And this is the critical point. He came up on the pro side of things. And I know there's talk about if Byron Leftwich gets the job, he wants Adrian Wilson, who came up on the pro side of the shop in scouting. I do think it's important for guys who come that route to eventually go into player personnel, director of player personnel, where they oversee both the pro side and the college side. And we've talked about that in the past. An example is Terry Fontenot, who was with New Orleans for years as a pro personnel director. And then he was actually brought up and helped supervise both sides because the college side is bigger, the director of college scouting. And then what we don't want that whole, well, you don't know the pro side thing. And now the director of college scouting is sitting there telling you to draft this dude, and you don't really have those relationships. So I really do believe that because Rand has been able to do both, that he's probably ready to take that next step. And if they go get a senior vice president of football operations, go to an organization that has a huge structure, like I talked about the Chiefs in the past, where they have a huge structure that has those type of guys. It doesn't have to be a former coach. It doesn't have to be a former player. I think Mark Lampin's fine as the team president to handle the business affairs. I really do believe that I want somebody who sat in those chairs and sat in those meetings, not just some dude because we all know his name. I told you, man, familiarity can be poison sometimes when it comes to picking these jobs. But I do believe that the Jaguars have some very, very tough decisions to make. Now, those decisions are getting harder because now I'm hearing that Jim Caldwell is a candidate for either the job in Chicago or Minnesota. I think the Jaguars kind of dragged their feet a little bit too much. And now they've created automatic competition, whereas they got off to a roaring start because they were able to go before anyone else. Well, now that gap has been closed. And I do think a job like Chicago or Minnesota is intriguing because Minnesota has weapons all over the place on offense. And then Chicago, they do have a really good front on defense, and they have a lot of pieces, and they got a young quarterback too, who the opinion of a lot of people is that he's probably just as good as Trevor Lawrence. Not better, but at least he's shown enough promise to be just as good. And now Miami is open, and Houston is expected to possibly be open, and Denver is only a quarterback away because they have a really, really good roster. So um Pep Hamilton, one of my favorite offensive coordinators, the guy who's really been a quarterback whisperer for a lot of years, is now going to interview in Carolina. So Sean is being very deliberate, but he may be losing his advantage because now some jobs are opening up and he may not be able to get his guy. That's why I think it's important for them, and they haven't done it. They haven't hired a GM, but I thought they needed to go out and get a guy that everybody wanted to work with, because I think you have a quarterback that everyone wants to work with. And if you get a front office guy that everybody wants to work with, this could have gone a lot easier. But thus, here we are. It's been fun, man. I'm like I said, I'm under the weather today, trying to get myself back together, but I need you guys to make sure that you make Locked On Bets your second listen of the day. Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and analyst Lee Sterling. They're going to give you every single thing you need in order for you to be able to get the information you need to make your bets as we head towards the playoffs. We'll see if there's any news that breaks. Of course, you'll always get breaking news from here if the Jaguars do make a move one way or the other with the general manager or the coaching change. I will make sure I have that for you guys. But until tomorrow, you guys take care of each other, man. And I'll be all right. I'll get better. And I'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks. If like I said, if you hear anything in my voice or in my demeanor, just chalk it up to me just trying to get well. But you guys take care of each other, and we'll see you again tomorrow here on Locked On Jaguars.